I am going to start with a gentle warning that might save you a week of disappointment and a handful of side effects. That little brown bud in your spice jar can help. Yet, if you toss it into boiling water or reach for the oil straight from the bottle, you can strip away the very compounds you are hoping to get, and you can irritate your stomach or thin your blood if you already take a blood thinner. The simple fix is a single small cup made from lightly crushed buds, steeped just below boiling, and sipped with a meal. And I will show you how to do that safely and well. I've practiced long enough to watch fads come and go, but clove has stayed in my exam room stories because its main natural molecule, called eugenol, is not folklore. It is the reason dentists have leaned on clove in the chair to calm tooth pain for generations. And it is one reason many patients tell me their joints feel quieter when they prepare the spice the right way. Modern lab work explains why. Clove sits near the top among spices for antioxidant strength, and eugenol helps dial down the same inflammatory pathway that common pain pills target, which is one reason some people notice a softer ache after meals when they pair food with a properly brewed cup. That is the promise. Here is the risk tucked inside the promise. More is not better, and the oil is not the tea. Concentrated oil can upset the liver, and it can nudge your blood toward easier bruising, especially if you already use a medicine that thins the blood. That is why I begin every clove conversation with moderation and method. If you are curious, start with the kitchen spice, not the oil. Use fresh whole buds with a warm, sweet aroma. Crush them just enough to open the surface, never to dust. Heat water until it whispers rather than roars. Let the buds rest under a cover so the fragrant steam stays in the cup instead of the air. Taste it plain the first time so you learn its line between warm and strong. If you sense stomach warmth, take it with food or shorten the steep by a minute. If you take a blood thinner or have a bleeding disorder, talk with your clinician before you make this a habit. I am not asking you to believe in magic. I am asking you to try a careful cup and to notice your own body with the same patience I bring to clinic. In this first part, I want you to see that the path to feeling better does not begin with a promise of miracles. It begins with a small, well-made cup, a little curiosity, and a plan to keep what helps while skipping what hurts. You might not expect a cup of tea made from a spice to alter anything in your body beyond a moment of warmth, but here is the twist that patients never forget once they hear it. Within hours of sipping a carefully brewed clove tea, certain pathways in your cells begin to quiet the same fires of inflammation that over the years wear down joints and drain energy. By the end of the week, the shift is not just about less stiffness, but about feeling clearer, breathing easier, and even sensing a steadier rhythm in intimate health. I am not promising miracles, and I will never tell you to throw away your medicine, but I am pointing toward a daily act so simple that the wellness industry rarely talks about it because it does not cost more than a few cents. Modern studies have begun to confirm what traditional healers sensed centuries ago. Researchers at well-known American universities have noted how clove tea shows activity similar to certain prescription anti-inflammatory drugs without the stomach harm, and how it may act as a functional beverage rather than just a drink. That phrase matters because it signals to clinicians that this is more than folklore. The advantage of this daily cup is that it offers a gentle, layered benefit rather than a sudden spike and crash. And for many older adults, it fits the budget and the routine. The disadvantage is that it requires consistency and patience, because missing days means slowing the gains, and expecting too much too soon can lead to disappointment. If you give yourself 7 steady days, the compound effect can be surprising. And I will guide you step by step through what tends to unfold in real bodies, rather than theory alone. The story is not about hype. It is about giving your cells a break and your organs a chance to recover with a practice as humble as tea. I remember the first time I looked at the lab reports on cloves and thought they had to be exaggerated. How could a spice used in cookies and cider show antioxidant power several times greater than the blueberry that headlines every health magazine? Yet the data kept repeating itself. The key player is eugenol, a natural oil that makes up the majority of clove's essence. It works like a quiet guardian inside your body, damping down the same chemical sparks that fuel inflammation and damage tissues over time. Alongside eugenol live more than 30 other compounds, each with its own role, from supporting healthy bacteria in the gut to calming overactive immune cells. When scientists measured clove's antioxidant strength, the number was so high it looked unreal on the page, many times the score of other familiar spices. What does that mean for you sitting at home with a jar in your cabinet? It means that this tiny bud has more protective force than the foods we usually call super. The strength is real, but here is the caution. Numbers on paper do not heal by themselves. If you throw a few cloves into boiling water without breaking them open, you leave nearly all that potential locked inside, like trying to squeeze juice from a fruit without cutting the skin. And if you expect 1 cup to replace all your medicines, you will only meet frustration. The advantage is that the science gives us confidence that cloves are not just folklore. They have measurable effects that modern tools can capture. The drawback is that science cannot drink the tea for you. You have to prepare it properly and give it time to work with your body. When I explain this to patients, I use the picture of a garden. If you water it once, nothing changes. If you water it every day with patience, the plants respond. Your cells respond in much the same way, to steady, gentle exposure rather than a single splash. That is what makes clove tea worth considering. Not hype, but the slow, consistent help that accumulates beneath the surface. I have watched many patients walk away from a remedy, not because it failed, but because they prepared it in the wrong way. With clove tea, that mistake is common. People drop whole buds into water that is rolling at a boil, and then wonder why the drink tastes harsh, yet does little for their health. What happens is simple. The protective oils are locked inside the tough shell, and the boiling water drives away the delicate compounds into the air instead of into your cup. It is like putting an orange in hot water without peeling it and expecting to taste juice. The advantage of doing it right is that you release the compounds your body can actually use. The disadvantage of rushing or skipping the step is that you waste nearly all of the benefit, and you may even turn yourself off from trying again because the flavor becomes too bitter. My advice is always the same. Take 3 or 4 fresh whole cloves that still carry a sweet, warm scent. Place them under the flat side of a knife and press just enough to crack the surface. Heat your water until it whispers, not until it roars. Pour it over the crushed buds and cover the cup so the steam that carries the active oils stays where it belongs. After 8 or 10 minutes, strain and sip while warm. In this form, you are not drinking flavored water. You are giving your body access to a pharmacy of natural compounds that science has measured and confirmed. The advantage is that it costs only pennies and requires only patience. The drawback is that if you ignore the method, you might as well be drinking plain hot water. That is why I insist on teaching the ritual as carefully as I teach the science. The method is what unlocks the promise. On the first day, the change that surprises most people is not hidden or subtle. It is the quieting of pain. I have seen patients with stiff knees or sore backs take a cup in the morning, and by the afternoon notice that the sharp edges of their discomfort have softened. Science explains this in familiar terms. The oil inside the clove carries eugenol, which blocks the same inflammatory pathway that a common pill like ibuprofen targets. Yet it does so without scarring the lining of your stomach. The advantage is clear. You can get real relief without reaching for a bottle of pills every few hours. The drawback is also real. The effect is gentle, and it is not a replacement for prescribed treatment in severe conditions. Think of it like turning down the volume on a radio rather than cutting the wires. You will still hear the song of arthritis or muscle soreness, but the noise will not dominate your day. Clinical work has shown that inflammation markers can drop within the very first day of use. That is not folklore. It is measurable. Dentists have relied on clove oil for centuries to ease tooth pain because the numbing spreads quickly through nerve endings. When you drink the tea, the effect moves through the bloodstream and gives your whole body a moment of calm. The advantage is that this calm lasts for hours, without the crash of a drug wearing off. The drawback is that you must respect the limits. Too much clove can irritate rather than soothe, and leaning on it as your only solution would be unfair to your body. But if you use it with patience, the first day shows you why this tiny bud earned its place in medicine long before modern pills existed. By the second day, most people notice the difference, not in their joints, but in their stomach. I have heard the same story repeated many times. Someone who always felt heavy and bloated after meals takes a cup of clove tea, and within a day the sensation shifts. Instead of a tight balloon in the belly, there is a lighter, calmer rhythm. The reason is that clove encourages your stomach and pancreas to release the enzymes that break down food more fully. Proteins and fats that once lingered and fermented now move along more smoothly. The advantage is that nutrients are freed for your body to use rather than wasted. The drawback is that if the tea is brewed too strong or taken on an empty stomach, it can feel sharp and unsettling. Science backs up what patients describe. Eugenol and its partners act like quiet gatekeepers, slowing the growth of harmful bacteria, such as salmonella, while leaving the friendly ones in place. At the same time, the stomach produces more protective mucus, like a soft lining of clay that shields the wall from acid. That is why ancient healers used clove for ulcers long before endoscopy proved the point. In my practice, I tell patients to think of it as tuning the digestive orchestra. When the strings are too loud and the horns too soft, the music is unpleasant. With clove, the sections come back into balance, and the whole body feels the harmony. The advantage is clear digestion, steadier bowels, and less bloating. The disadvantage is that it is not a cure for serious disease, and it requires moderation, because too much spice can overwhelm as easily as it can help. By the close of the second day, many people describe not just comfort but a subtle lift in mood, because the gut and the brain are in constant conversation. That is why this stage of the journey matters. It is the beginning of balance that spreads beyond the stomach. By the third day, the story shifts toward the way your body handles sugar. I remember a man in his late 60s who had struggled with energy crashes after meals. When he added a cup of clove tea to his routine, he told me that the usual fog that settled over him after lunch lifted, and he could stay alert into the afternoon. The reason lies in how eugenol makes your cells more responsive to insulin, the hormone that opens the door for sugar to move from the blood into the muscles and liver. When that door is stiff, sugar lingers in the bloodstream and you feel sluggish. When the door swings more freely, energy flows where it is needed, and the spikes and crashes are less severe. The advantage is that people with borderline blood sugar find a gentler curve, less of the sharp rise and sudden fall. The drawback is that it does not replace prescribed medication, and it may take weeks of steady use to show its full effect. In laboratory studies, animals fed clove showed lower glucose and healthier liver enzymes, suggesting that fat was being processed more efficiently. That is promising, but in real life the key is consistency and moderation. Too much spice can irritate the stomach, and relying on it alone while ignoring diet and exercise would be a mistake. I tell patients to imagine insulin as a key and sugar as a crowd at the door. With age, the lock rusts and the crowd grows restless. Clove acts like oil on the lock, helping the key turn more smoothly so the crowd can enter quietly. The advantage is smoother energy, steadier mood, and less strain on the liver. The disadvantage is that you cannot expect one key to manage the whole house. You still need the discipline of balanced meals and daily movement. But by the third day, many people feel a glimpse of steadiness that convinces them to keep going. By the fourth day, many people notice something they did not expect from a simple spice tea, a sense of lighter circulation. I recall a woman in her early 70s who told me her hands and feet usually felt cold by late afternoon. After several days of clove tea, she was surprised to find warmth returning to her fingers. The science behind her story is that clove helps the body release more nitric oxide, a natural gas that relaxes blood vessels so they open wider and allow smoother flow. At the same time, eugenol makes platelets less sticky, which means the blood moves without clumping. The advantage is that pressure inside the vessels eases and tissues receive more oxygen. The drawback is that if you already take blood thinners or have a bleeding disorder, the same effect can raise your risk of bruising or slow healing. That is why I always tell patients to pair excitement with caution and to speak with their clinician before making it a habit. Studies show that oxidative stress is one of the earliest sparks that damage arteries, and clove ranks among the strongest natural antioxidants measured in food labs. It acts like a shield over the fragile lining of your vessels, preventing the first scratches that later turn into dangerous plaques. I tell patients to imagine their arteries as highways. Without protection, heavy trucks leave cracks that grow into potholes. With Clove, the surface is guarded and traffic moves more smoothly. The advantage is that daily use may support healthier blood pressure and reduce the silent wear that leads to heart disease. The disadvantage is that this is support, not cure, and it must be combined with habits like walking and balanced diet. By the fourth day, what you feel is not just warmth in your hands, but a reassurance that your vessels are being cared for from the inside out. By the fifth day, what often stands out is the way the body defends itself more smoothly. I remember an older gentleman who came to me every winter complaining that the smallest chill led to a lingering cough. After less than a week of adding clove tea, he told me that the usual scratch in his throat had not taken hold the same way. The reason is that compounds in clove act directly on the front lines of the immune system. They help white blood cells respond faster and stronger, while also cutting down the growth of unwanted bacteria, viruses, and even certain fungi. The advantage is that your defenses feel steadier without the jittery push that some supplements create. The drawback is that this is not a substitute for vaccines or prescribed medicine when infection is serious. Clove tea is support, not armor. Scientists have shown that eugenol can block the replication of flu virus in lab tests and limit the spread of staph bacteria. That gives us a scientific echo to what patients describe: easier breathing and less irritation in the airways. I like to explain it with a picture. Imagine your immune system as a fire department. In many older adults, the trucks are slow to roll out, and the flames spread before help arrives. Clove adds fuel to the engine, so the trucks leave faster and the flames shrink sooner. The advantage is fewer minor infections taking hold, shorter bouts of cough or congestion, and a general sense of resilience. The disadvantage is that if you expect it to shield you from every germ, you will be disappointed. And if you overbrew the tea, it can irritate the throat it was meant to soothe. By the fifth day, many people feel a quiet confidence. Not because they are invincible, but because their body is once again responding, like a team that remembers how to work together. By the sixth day, many people are surprised to notice a shift that is not only physical, but deeply personal. I recall a couple in their late 60s who came to me not for pain or digestion, but for a quiet frustration they could not name. After adding clove tea to their days, they both described a sense of warmth, confidence, and renewed ease in their most intimate moments. The science behind their story lies in circulation and hormones. Clove helps blood vessels open more fully, allowing stronger flow to organs that depend on that supply. At the same time, its compounds may nudge the body toward better balance in hormone signals that often fade with age. The advantage is that desire and response can feel more natural, without the mechanical strain that sometimes shadows older relationships. The drawback is that clove is not a magic switch. In very high amounts, some research suggests it may lower testosterone, and using concentrated oil can cause irritation instead of comfort. That is why moderation matters more here than anywhere. Think of it as tuning a piano that has gone slightly out of key. With gentle adjustment, the notes ring clear again, but if you strike too hard, you risk breaking the string. Modern studies confirm clove's effect on circulation and its role as an antioxidant that shields the very vessels needed for sexual health. The advantage is a safer, more affordable way to support intimacy. The disadvantage is that it must be paired with honesty, communication, and overall health. By the 6th day, many people do not boast of performance, but quietly smile at the return of closeness, which is perhaps the most human benefit of all. By the 7th day, the change feels less like a single note and more like a full chord. I remember a retired teacher who told me that by the end of her first week with clove tea, she was startled not only by calmer joints and easier digestion, but by the way her mind felt clear again. She said the fog that had hung over her mornings lifted, and she could recall names and details with less struggle. Others describe falling asleep faster and waking with a steadier mood. Science offers a frame for these stories. By reducing inflammation and calming oxidative stress, clove helps the brain fire its signals more cleanly, and by supporting hormone balance, it gives the body a gentler rhythm for sleep. The advantage is that the benefits stack, each layer building on the last, so that the body feels more like a whole than a collection of problems. The drawback is that results vary. Some people notice sharper memory, others notice deeper sleep, and a few feel little change at all until weeks later. Clove is not a cure, all but a quiet ally. I tell patients to think of the week as a rehearsal. The orchestra of digestion, immunity, circulation, and hormones has begun to play together, and the sound is harmony rather than noise. The advantage is that the practice costs little and risks little, yet can touch many corners of health. The disadvantage is that it requires patience, because harmony does not arrive overnight. By the 7th day, what matters most is not perfection, but the glimpse of a body remembering how to work as one. As the week closes, the question I hear most often is how to keep the benefit going without turning a gentle practice into a burden. The answer lies in the ritual of preparation. I tell my patients to use 3 or 4 whole buds with a sweet aroma, press them just enough to crack, never to crush, and pour water that whispers rather than boils. Cover the cup and let it rest for 8 to 10 minutes, then sip slowly while warm. The advantage of this method is that you draw out the protective oils without scalding them, and you capture the fragrance in the cup rather than losing it to the air. The drawback is that if you ignore these steps, you may brew only bitter water and wonder why nothing changes. I always warn against excess. 1 or 2 cups a day is enough. More can irritate the stomach or interfere with blood clotting, especially if you already take medicine for thinning the blood. Pregnant women should avoid clove in concentrated form. The advantage is that when respected, the tea is safe, affordable, and easy to fold into daily life. The disadvantage is that careless use can undo the very calm you are seeking. I suggest rotating with green tea or golden milk so that the palate stays fresh and the benefits extend across different systems. I have found that patients who weave clove tea into their evenings tend to sleep more deeply, while those who take it in the morning feel steadier energy. The method is flexible, but the key is moderation. In the end, what matters is not chasing a miracle, but honoring a ritual. A small cup each day is enough to remind the body of its own strength, and to remind you that healing is often a matter of patience and care.